Picture this, November 1970, Florence, Oregon. A small coastal town where the mighty Pacific Ocean meets tranquil dunes. The town is nestled between the rolling waves and the serene, undulating sand dunes, creating a picturesque landscape that seems almost timeless. The air is crisp, laced with the scent of salt and pine. Mornings in Florence are particularly enchanting, with the mist rising off the ocean and the first light of dawn casting a golden hue over the landscape. Unbeknownst to the residents, an unusual visitor is about to make a very big splash. The tranquility of this coastal haven is about to be disrupted in a way no one could have anticipated. Florence at that time was a quiet community, its lifeblood tied to the sea. The rhythm of life here was dictated by the tides and the seasons, with fishing being a cornerstone of the local economy. Fishing boats bobbed in the harbor, their catch a vital part of the local economy. These boats, with their weathered hulls and seasoned crews, were a testament to the town's enduring relationship with the ocean. Tourists flocked to the area, drawn by the rugged beauty of the coastline. They came to experience the raw, unspoiled nature of Florence, to walk its beaches, and to breathe in the fresh, salty air. Life in Florence had a rhythm, a predictable ebb and flow. The days were marked by the comings and goings of the tides, the cycles of the fishing industry, and the seasonal influx of visitors. But all that was about to change. An event was on the horizon that would disrupt the town's peaceful existence and leave an indelible mark on its history. A spectacle awaited them, one that would forever be etched in the annals of the town's history. The residents of Florence were about to witness something extraordinary. The change arrived in the form of a massive 45-foot sperm whale. This colossal creature, a behemoth of the deep, had washed ashore, creating a scene of both awe and concern. It lay dead on a public beach, deposited there by the relentless tide. The sight of such a massive animal, lifeless and stranded, was both awe-inspiring and unsettling for the townspeople. The sight of the whale, a behemoth of the deep, was awe-inspiring and unsettling. People gathered around, their faces a mix of curiosity and disbelief, as they tried to comprehend the sheer size of the creature before them. Its immense size dwarfed everything around it. The whale's presence on the small beach was a stark reminder of the ocean's power and the mysteries it held. The whale quickly became a local attraction, drawing curious onlookers and the attention of local authorities. People came from all around to see the giant, to take pictures, and to share in the communal experience of this rare event. The presence of the decaying carcass posed a unique challenge. As the days passed, the whale's body began to decompose, and the once awe-inspiring sight turned into a smelly, pressing problem. The sheer size of the whale made moving it an impossible task. The townspeople and authorities were at a loss, trying to figure out how to deal with the massive carcass that was now a part of their beach. And as the days grew colder, the stench of decomposition began to permeate the air. The once fresh, salty breeze was now tainted with the foul odor of decay, making the situation even more urgent. The town of Florence had a big, smelly problem on its hands, and they needed a solution, and fast. The community came together, brainstorming ideas and seeking advice on how to handle the unexpected visitor that had washed up on their shores. The discovery of the deceased whale was as unexpected as it was unwelcome. It was a day like any other on the Oregon coastline, with the usual ebb and flow of the tides, until the massive creature was spotted. The news spread like wildfire, and soon, the quiet beach was the center of a growing spectacle. It was a sight that stirred both curiosity and a sense of foreboding. The locals, dressed in their 1970s attire, gathered around the enormous carcass, their faces a mix of fascination and dread. The initial curiosity quickly gave way to concern as the reality of the situation set in. The whale's presence was not just a spectacle, it was a problem that needed solving. The sheer size of the creature was awe-inspiring, a true testament to the vastness of the ocean and the incredible beings that inhabit it. Its length stretched across the sand, a giant reminder of the ocean's mysteries. The ocean, with its endless horizon and crashing waves, seemed to mock the smallness of human concerns. Yet, this vastness had delivered a problem that was now very much a human concern. The creatures of the deep, usually hidden from view, had sent one of their own to the shore, and it was now up to the people to decide its fate. Yet this wonder was tempered by the practical problem at hand: what to do with a 45-foot whale carcass. The discussions began in earnest, with officials and locals alike trying to come up with a feasible solution. The enormity of the task was clear to everyone. Moving the whale was out of the question. Its size and weight made it an immovable object, even with the combined efforts of men and machinery. Word of the beach giant spread quickly. The news brought more people to the site, each drawn by a mix of morbid curiosity and a desire to witness the unusual event. People flocked to the site, drawn by morbid curiosity. Cameras clicked and binoculars were raised as the crowd grew larger, each person wanting to capture a piece of the bizarre occurrence. The whale, once a majestic denizen of the deep, now lay lifeless on the sand. Its presence was a stark contrast to the images of it swimming freely in the ocean, a reminder of the fragility of life. Now it lay lifeless on the sand, its enormous bulk becoming an increasingly pungent problem. The once majestic creature was now a decaying mass, and the smell was becoming unbearable. The smell alone was enough to keep people at bay, but the sight of the decaying carcass, bloated and reeking, was something that had to be experienced to be believed. It was a sensory assault that left a lasting impression. The stench was overpowering, forcing people to cover their noses and wave their hands in front of their faces in a futile attempt to ward off the smell. The sight of the decaying carcass, bloated and reeking, was a grim reminder of the inevitability of decay. Flies buzzed around the carcass, adding to the already unbearable scene. It was something that had to be experienced to be believed. The horror on people's faces was evident as they took in the sight and smell of the decaying whale. Moving the whale was out of the question. Its size and weight made it an immovable object, even with the combined efforts of men and machinery. The logistics of such an operation were simply too daunting. Its size and weight made it an immovable object, even with the combined efforts of men and machinery. The heavy machinery brought in to attempt the task seemed almost laughably inadequate against the sheer mass of the whale. Even with the combined efforts of men and machinery, the whale remained stubbornly in place. The ropes and tractors were no match for the massive carcass. Burying the carcass on the beach was also not feasible. The sandy soil and the constant tidal action would quickly unearth the whale, leading to the same problem all over again. The sandy soil and the constant tidal action would quickly unearth the whale, making burial a temporary and ineffective solution. The tides, relentless and unyielding, would soon expose the buried carcass, bringing the problem back to square one, leading to the same problem. The ocean, which had delivered the whale to the shore, would not allow it to be hidden away so easily. The authorities in Florence were faced with a dilemma that had no easy answers. The pressure was on to find a solution, and quickly. The stench was becoming unbearable, and the decaying carcass posed a health hazard. That had no easy answers. The officials looked puzzled, shaking their heads in disagreement as they debated the best course of action. The pressure was on to find a solution, and quickly. Time was of the essence, and the longer the whale remained on the beach, the worse the situation became. The stench was becoming unbearable, and the decaying carcass posed a health hazard. The rotting skin of the whale was a breeding ground for bacteria, and the health risks were mounting, and the decaying carcass posed a health hazard. Flies swarmed around the carcass, and the concern for public health grew with each passing day. Numerous ideas were floated around, each more outlandish than the last. Some suggested towing the whale back out to sea, only to be met with the grim reality that it would likely wash ashore again, perhaps even in a worse condition, each more outlandish than the last. The brainstorming sessions were filled with wild ideas, each one more impractical than the last. Some suggested towing the whale back out to sea, hoping that the ocean would take care of the problem, but this idea was quickly dismissed, only to be met with the grim reality that it would likely wash ashore again, perhaps even in a worse condition. The ocean, unpredictable and unforgiving, could not be trusted to solve the problem, that it would likely wash ashore again, perhaps even in a worse condition. The waves would bring the carcass back, and the problem would be even more difficult to manage, perhaps even in a worse condition. The thought of the whale returning in an even more decayed state was enough to dismiss the idea entirely. Others proposed burning the carcass, a suggestion quickly dismissed due to the potential environmental impact. The idea of setting the whale on fire was both impractical and dangerous, a suggestion quickly dismissed due to the potential environmental impact. Environmentalists were quick to point out the dangers of such an action, and the idea was shelved. The solution, when it finally came, was as unexpected as the whale's arrival: dynamite. The decision to use explosives was both bold and controversial, but it was seen as the only viable option. Was as unexpected as the whale's arrival: dynamite. The explosion was a sight to behold, a dramatic end to an unusual problem. The whale, which had arrived so unexpectedly, was finally dealt with in an equally unexpected manner. As the stench of the decomposing whale intensified, so did the urgency to find a solution. The community was growing increasingly desperate, and the pressure on local authorities was mounting. The idea of using dynamite, initially met with skepticism, began to circulate among the townspeople and officials alike. It was a radical solution, but as the days passed and the whale's condition worsened, it began to gain traction among the authorities tasked with removing the whale. It was a bold plan, one that carried inherent risks, but it was also a plan born out of sheer necessity and desperation. The community's frustration was palpable, and the authorities knew they had to act swiftly. The responsibility for this unusual task fell upon the shoulders of George Thornton, the Oregon Highway Division engineer. Thornton, a seasoned professional accustomed to dealing with matters of infrastructure, found himself confronted with a challenge unlike any he had encountered before. This was not a bridge or a road, it was a massive, decaying whale. He approached the task with a mix of pragmatism and trepidation, knowing that the success or failure of the operation rested squarely on his shoulders. Thornton's plan was simple, at least on paper. The idea was to blast the whale into smaller pieces using dynamite. These smaller pieces, it was reasoned, would then be easier to dispose of. The logic was sound, but the execution was fraught with uncertainty. No one, not even Thornton, could predict with any certainty how the whale would react to being blown up. Adding to the complexity of the operation was the delayed arrival of the dynamite. Originally scheduled to arrive on Thursday, the explosives were held up, pushing the operation back to Friday. This delay only served to heighten the tension and anticipation surrounding the event. The residents of Florence, and indeed the entire nation, waited with bated breath to see what would transpire on that fateful Friday. The stakes were high, and the outcome was anything but certain. The entire operation was a gamble, one that could either solve the problem or create an even bigger mess. As the day of the operation approached, the tension in the air was palpable. People gathered, news crews set up their cameras, and everyone waited to see if Thornton's plan would work. The delay in the dynamite's arrival had only added to the drama, making the stakes feel even higher. As Friday dawned, the town of Florence was abuzz with anticipation. Would the plan succeed, or would it end in disaster? The entire nation watched, waiting to see the outcome of this unprecedented and daring plan. The residents of Florence, and indeed the entire nation, waited with bated breath to see what would transpire on that fateful Friday.